Welcome back, everybody. Today we are celebrating Holy Thursday. So this is the day that we normally see our RCIA candidates get their feet washed right after the homily. And that comes directly from today's readings. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those. The readings that we're going to look at today come from the book of Exodus and John's Gospel. And that's really where we're going to spend our time focusing. I am excited to be joined by Chelsea Colomb once again today.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so Exodus. We've got this scene that I think we're all familiar with, and maybe none of us actually know, or some of us don't know, that this is where the idea of the Passover meal comes from.
Right.
So in the book of Exodus, we have the Moses and his people are being oppressed and enslaved in Egypt, and God says, you're going to go to Pharaoh, you're going to tell him to let my people go. He goes, Pharaoh agrees, and then he says, no, never mind. And then God starts to send the 10 plagues, and the last of the 10 plagues is that God is going to send the angel of death to wipe out the firstborn son.
Right.
And so he tells Moses to tell the people, you're going to slaughter a lamb, a 1-year-old lamb, and then you're going to take the blood of the lamb, you're going to put it on the doorpost.
Right.
So like the door frames that we have in modern homes.
Right. And not just a lamb, but an unblemished lamb.
Unblemished 1-year-old lamb. Yes, very specific.
Very
right?
specific.
You're gonna slaughter it. You're gonna do this with the blood, and then you're gonna eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And he even gives a specific understanding of how that lamb is to be cooked, how that lamb is to be consumed, and even says that, like, if you don't have a big enough family to consume the entire lamb yourself, then talk to your neighbors and see if you guys can do it together, right? So it's very specific the way that they're doing this. Okay, so we have all of these prescriptions of how this is supposed to look. This is the feast of the Passover that also goes into the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is two very important feasts in the Jewish calendar.
Right.
And that's where all of this comes from. And so all of those ideas. And so the Passover is the angel of death passes over these homes that have the blood on the doorpost. And from there, we know kind of then it says that you're going to gird your loins, you're going to have your staff ready, be ready to go. Because the next thing that we don't see here is the Jewish people fleeing to the Red Sea. And we'll get those readings, I think, on Saturday. That's one of the readings for Saturday. So that all happens. We fast forward to today, so to speak, where we have Jesus and the disciples with the Last Supper.
Right.
So the Passover meal. And Jesus who takes off his outer garment now. And I think that's such a huge symbolic thing that happens, because I look at that, and if we understand that God prescribes it in a certain way, that you're going to gird your loins and have your staff ready so that you can flee, Jesus doing the opposite, I think, is showing we don't have to run away anymore. There's no reason for us to be scared. So he takes off his outer garment and he washes the feet of the disciples, and we have this exchange between he and Peter of, Peter's like, you don't need to wash my feet. And Jesus is like, no, you don't understand. And then he's like, well, then fine, wash all of me.
Right.
And he's like,
if you want my inheritance,
right,
then you have to, do this. Peter's like, oh, well then, okay.
Right, like I'll take a whole shower.
Give me a bath.
Just give me the whole thing. Right.
Right.
And Jesus is like, no, you still don't get it. It was like, you're all clean. I just have to do this to show you. And he's taking on the role of the servant. So the servant would have washed the master's feet at the end of each day, because the master would be out working and doing things, and the servant was also out working and doing things. But when the master came home, he would rest at table, and the servant would come and wash his feet. And so Jesus takes the role of the servant, right? This is where we get the idea of servant leadership, right? Is from this reading. And so Jesus washes the disciples' feet, he tells Peter, and then he says, but one of you, after he says all of you are clean, he says, but one of you is actually not clean. And I'm sure, like, hearing that, I can't even imagine. Right, like everyone.
Oh,
It's not me. Like I'm good, you know. And then there's Judas. And Andrew and I talked a little bit about this yesterday. Like, man, like Jesus' words must just cut right to the heart. Like, one of you's not clean. Oh man, he's talking about me. Like,
right.
Do they know he's talking about me? I'm just gonna sneak out the back,
Yeah.
you know, and leave. And Jesus is just like, I imagine he's just shaking his head. One of you's not clean.
Almost like as kids when your parents are like yelling at you for something, and they're like yelling at all of you.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, they're actually talking to me. But
Yeah. Here's Jesus with his family of 12 sitting around the table. And he's washing their feet. And it says, you know, it's interesting because I think the gospel, it also addresses, it says that the devil had already seduced Judas. And Jesus is aware of that because he knew his hour was at hand.
right.
And he still chooses to wash his feet. He still chooses to take on the role of a servant, even to the person that he knows is going to betray him. And I just, yeah, there's so much this week that happens that's so beautiful. And then we know that, you know, and we'll pick this up tomorrow with the Good Friday reading, is that after this happens is when Jesus flees to go pray in the garden.
Right.
But I think his whole demeanor changed, like I said, with those two readings. I don't know that I've picked up on that contrast in years past of be ready to run as soon as you came when the Passover meal is done. And Jesus does the opposite in this scene.
And
it's
he's
like,
like,
I'm not going to run.
Right.
I have to show them how to lead. And I think that that's something that's also very significant. It's like a lot of times we get in these roles where we think we're the people in charge and we don't take on like the role of the servant. Instead, we take
Right.
on the role of, you know, he says, you call me teacher and master, which is correct because I am, but let me show you how to do this
Right.
the right way. It's like there was a TV show about that, Undercover Boss. Jesus is the first
Oh, yeah.
undercover. You know,
Jesus is the
Jesus
first undercover boss.
He's like, let me show you guys how to do this, and they're like, wait a minute, aren't you? Yeah.
Right. But I think also talking about Jesus with like doing the opposite of like being prepared to leave, I think it just shows like modeling not only the leadership, but like just faithfulness and like trust in that moment where it's like it doesn't, like all of your anxiety and all of that just gets put away when like you know your task at hand and like you know the faithfulness. And I think that's been something big in my own life of like just being faithful to whatever's in front of you. And I think Jesus modeled that very well at the Last Supper of like, I know this is what I'm called to do.
Right.
And even though it would be so much easier to just flee earlier than I flee in a sense of like going out to the garden, but I'd much rather extra time in prayer.
Right.
You know, but like I know this is what I'm called to do and like this is what I need to model to the disciples here.
Yeah. Even just like you're saying, the idea of trusting in the Lord, you know, that Jesus totally trusted in everything that was supposed to happen. And the idea that, you know, it talks about this constantly in the Bible of be not afraid. Even in the Psalm of be not afraid, I go before you always. Like Jesus knows. He knows what's going to happen. And at no point in time is there fear or distrust or anxiety. It's just acceptance of what the Lord has in store for him.
Right.
Yeah. And we see that modeled throughout that whole time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being with us again
you.
today and doing this. Thank all of you for watching. Please like and subscribe and share and do all those things for us. We look forward to being with you tomorrow for Good Friday and kind of an explanation of why we call it Good Friday, because I think some people, rightfully so, question why it's so good, knowing everything that happens that day. So from all of us here at All Saints, we thank you so much again for watching. We ask that you pray for us, and please know that we are praying for you as well. God bless.